Nothing beats the correspondence theory of truth. This is the truth your mom taught you when you were growing up. Don't lie to me. Correspondence theory and coherence theory sort of work together. Well, you can't have coherence theory of truth without correspondence theory of truth, because if you can't even agree that what we observe is truth, then how can you even begin to talk about how truth is relative to other truths also? We have to first be able to admit that what we see and what we test is true, and then you can come up with the coherence theory of truth, which is the truths are relative to each other in some sense also. And then, after you have agreed upon correspondence theory of truth and you've come up with the notion of a coherence theory of truth, then you can talk about a pragmatic view of truth that resides within the coherence theory that talks about how truth is pragmatic, where when things work, they're true. And that's going to be a subset. First of all, coherence is a subset of correspondence, and pragmatic truth is going to be a subset of coherence theory. I mean, just logically speaking. People out there who believe that just because they think something is true, it's true because they believe it, that has just as much validity as your imagination has corresponding to reality. I mean, I can believe that unicorns exist, but then we really have to question what existence means because there's no evidence of unicorns. What disappears in that sense? You trust anybody who has to trust you to make valid decisions believing in unicorns is going to be weary because you believe in unicorns. And so that's dismissing correspondence straight out of the gate, first of all. So you don't even have the foundation of what truth is in place. It can't be relative to you because you're not everything. You are just you. So you can't be involved in every truth. So how do we account for all the other truths that don't involve you? How about things that only involve me? Do those things not exist? So this is how we start walking down the road towards solipsism when we dismiss correspondence theory in favor of something that I believe is true. It's not a truth, okay? It's a truth. It's a truth in a very limited sense in that it's true that you like X, Y, and Z, but that doesn't make it true in the larger sense that scientists agree that this is true for everybody. And those are distinctions that we have to make because people just say the word truth and they throw it around as this blunt object. And then that creates massive confusion. And so that's why we have to define truth. That's why there are these definitions: correspondence, coherence, pragmatic truth. We talk about pragmatic truth, and I don't find it all that useful to even have the definition, but having this kind of like less than useful definition helps us flesh out the intellectual space. So that's what we're doing. We're exploring options and we're looking at what percentage of this concept is actually valid. And then we don't even have to change it to make it more valid. As we change it, it will evolve into something else that's already a thing. So its invalidity is that a word? Its nature of being invalid to a certain percentage is good for the concept and the overall field of intellectual space, because then we can sort of see where the dividing line occurs. We'll go over the pragmatic theory of truth, and it will help you better understand the dividing lines in intellectual space when we talk about truth. Everybody needs to understand these basics in philosophy. Christopher Hitchens said, "That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence." Hitchens' razor. You got hitch slapped. The pragmatic theory of truth is a philosophical concept that suggests the truth of a statement is determined by its practical consequences and usefulness. According to this theory, a belief or proposition is true if it works or is useful in achieving desired outcomes or solving problems. This theory is closely associated with the philosophical tradition of pragmatism, which was developed in the late 19th and 20th centuries by thinkers such as Charles Sanders Peirce, William James, and John Dewey. Practical consequences. Truth is evaluated based on the practical effects of accepting a belief. If a belief leads to successful action and helps us navigate the world effectively, it's considered true. I think this sends up red flags for most of us, since people who think that everybody's truth is somehow relative to them as individuals risk becoming a problem for society, especially if those people become leaders. We really need to lean into the notion of a verified shared truth, since that is the actual truth. Verification through experience. Truth is not an abstract, immutable property, but is instead verified through experience and experimentation. A belief is tested by its consequences in the real world. This I can get behind, but addressing the spectrum of individual experience and group experience is necessary. Individual truths and group truths are different. Pluralism of truth. Pragmatists often accept a plurality of truths, recognizing that different beliefs can be true in different contexts depending on their practical utility. This sounds good until you say depending on their practical utility, which practical for one could be impractical for another. Fallibilism. The pragmatic theory acknowledges that our beliefs are fallible and subject to revision based on new experiences and evidence. What's considered true today may be proven false tomorrow if it no longer works in practice. Verifiability. True statements are those that can be verified through experience or empirical testing. Instrumentalism. Truth is seen as an instrument or tool for achieving practical ends. A belief's value lies in its ability to solve problems and achieve goals. Anti-absolutism. There's no absolute unchanging truth. Truth is dynamic and evolves with human experience and knowledge. Consensus. Truth emerges through agreement within a community of inquirers over time. Criticisms of the pragmatic theory of truth. Relativism. Critics argue that pragmatism makes truth relative to what works for a particular person or group, doesn't account for all truths. Some truths, like mathematical ones, seem true regardless of practical use. Critics argue that the pragmatic theory of truth can lead to relativism, where any belief can be considered true as long as it's useful to someone. They also contend that it conflates the concept of truth with utility, overlooking the possibility that a belief can be useful but still false. Overall, the pragmatic theory of truth emphasizes a dynamic, experiential approach to understanding truth, highlighting the importance of practical consequences and continual inquiry. The statement, "I like energy drinks," is an example of a subjective or personal truth. Here are some points to consider. Subjective truth. This truth is based on individual preference and experience. It reflects your personal feelings and tastes, which may not be the same for others. Unlike objective truths, which are true regardless of personal feelings or opinions, subjective truths can vary from person to person. Someone else might dislike soda, which would be their own subjective truth. The truth of the statement, "I like soda," is true in the context of your personal experience. It doesn't require external verification or practical consequences beyond your own preference. Practical consequences. While the statement, "I like energy drinks," itself is a personal preference, from a pragmatic perspective, its truth could be considered in terms of how it influences your actions. For example, if liking energy drinks leads you to drink it often, this preference has practical consequences in your life. In this sense, the belief that you like energy drinks is true because it effectively guides your actions and decisions. In summary, "I like energy drinks" is a subjective truth grounded in personal experience and preference. From a pragmatic viewpoint, its truth is reflected in the practical consequences and actions that stem from this preference. The truth is complex. The dynamic interplay between the group and the individual, as well as how we define truth, create a conditional balance. We can't even survive without accepting the correspondence theory of truth as valid, at least indirectly. Extreme skepticism will have you considering the brain in a vat scenario. But life is repeatable. I mean, it's monotonous and boring. It's so repeatable. Probabilities guide us in an obvious manner. The truth your mom taught you when you were young is the truth that dominates reality. Truth corresponds with what is observed. If you're willing to accept that, then the next step is honesty as a principle of representing observable reality with language to the best of your ability. It's a thing. Honesty's a thing. It's noble when personal gain is pressuring you to cheat. It's noble when your survival is on the line, but you stick to your principles. It's despicable when some take advantage and misrepresent reality. This is the foundation of ethics, and it's important. It's universal.